Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, the football world unites behind Sir Alex Ferguson, the former Manchester United manager. He's in intensive care after undergoing emergency brain surgery. In the Premier League today, Chelsea, they face the Champions League finalists Liverpool, and Arsene Wenger, he takes charge of his final home game as Arsenal manager. Stoke, they've become the first team to be relegated from the Premier League. They were beaten by Crystal Palace yesterday. Here to discuss all that and much more, Steve Bates, he's the chief football writer at The People. Darren Lewis is a football reporter with The Mirror, and Jonathan Northcroft is football correspondent at The Sunday Times. Morning, guys. Good to see you as ever. Don't forget, you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers then. They reflect, naturally, on Sir Alex Ferguson. At the age of 76, fighting for his life. That's the front page of The Sunday Times this morning. Jonathan's written about Sir Alex this morning. They all reflect on that operation. Fergie's fight for life is the Mail on Sunday. This back page of the Sunday Mirror this morning. We're praying for you, Sir Alex. That's the message from the world of football. The front page of the Sun, Fergie's fight for life. Back of the Star this morning, the ex-Manchester United manager in intensive care with his fights for life. Back page of the Sunday People, Steve's paper. Stay strong. Big man, that is the message as the football world unites behind Sir Alex Ferguson. And I'm pretty sure that'll be your message as well, Steve, because you're a man who knew and knows Sir Alex Ferguson very, very well from his time as the Manchester United manager. You've written about him this morning. Tell us your thoughts on the current situation with Sir Alex Ferguson and just what a man and what a fighter that he is.
I believe from all what I'm hearing is it's yesterday was a very positive outcome to what could have been a very bad day, and I think as we all know, Sir Alex, Jonathan as well, he is a fighter. It's been said many times and written many times over the last 24 hours or so. He is a fighter, and I'm absolutely certain that that the well wishes and the support he's getting from the wider world is just absolutely what we could have expected, really, because as Johnny will know, he portrays this public perhaps image during his time as a manager of a kind of very aggressive, pugilistic manager who was always up for confrontation. Privately, he is a man of warm humour, very kind and generous with his time, and I think that's reflected in the way that he's getting well wishes from all around the globe, really, from the wider football family.
Jonathan, you wrote about Sir Alex this morning as well, didn't you? And that's in the first edition of the Sunday Times. Just tell us a little bit about your insight into Sir Alex Ferguson, the kind of guy that he is, because you've known him for such a long period. Yeah,
I mean, I knew him, I suppose, as a child, as a fan, long before I covered him as a journalist. And I just try to write a personal piece, I suppose, about what Fergie has meant, to my life and to football. I mean, I was a kid at Aberdeen, about 7 years old when he turned up, and Aberdeen's quite a quiet town, quite a quiet club. And he was just like a whirlwind, he came, he made us think anything was possible. He beat Celtic, Rangers, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. Just a kind of tornado of energy, and then you saw him go to Manchester United and do the same. And covering him as a journalist was, I suppose, a sort of privilege I didn't think I'd ever have. And I think one of the things I wrote in that piece was he's the only person in football I think I've ever felt awed by. But I go back to that kind of energy that he had as a competitor, as a manager, and he will need all of that now. It was a strange day yesterday to think of this figure sort of fighting for his life, but as Steve said, there's a more positive outcome to the end of the day, and thoughts are with him, obviously.
Yeah, I think we all think, none of us are immortal, obviously, but in terms of Sir Alex, everybody thinks,
he had that air of invincibility.
Strong, big man. He's faced huge challenges and overcome them. I mean, obviously, in a football sense, not only did he smash the Old Firm cartel in Glasgow with Aberdeen, but then he came down to Manchester and famously, as he said, knocked Liverpool off the perch, because Liverpool were the dominant force in those days. And to do that, you have to be an immense character. And he carried that on for 27 years, and as Johnny's just said, working through an era with such a powerful man and being around him sort of every week was an absolute privilege, and I'm absolutely certain that we will see him back in the director's box at Old Trafford hopefully very soon.
Yeah, I certainly hope he does. Yesterday, Darren, it just shows you the level of respect, his stature around the world, that so many people, whether it's on social media, and of course in the papers this morning, full of tributes and full of support.
Absolutely, and they keep coming as well. Obviously we down here in the south have been gearing up to say goodbye to Arsene Wenger, who has his final home game with Arsenal today. But I think, when you look at what Arsene's achieved, and you look at what Sir Alex has achieved, he set the bar by which every other manager in this country is judged. How many managers have come in since he retired and still not been able to make anywhere near the kind of impact that he made? He kind of bestrides the game, really, and I think, as the chaps have been saying, we expect to see him back in a director's box soon because he has that tenacity, he has that strength of character, and he has that backing from right across the game. Social media now has changed our industry, as we know, and it enables so many people instantly to transcend rivalries, as they have done. Liverpool have been fantastic with a statement. Arsenal were one of the first clubs to send their good wishes. City as well. But it also enables people outside of this country. Allegri, for example, at Juventus, has put messages on social media. Scolari in Brazil, it's come from far and wide, and rightly so. We hope he gets well soon. Yeah,
I like the piece in your piece this morning, Jonathan, about the first time you phoned Sir Alex Ferguson. You said that you're in awe of him. What was that phone call like?
Well, it actually came after my first hairdryer, which was my introduction to him personally. Having sort of worshipped him from the stands. I was a young sports writer in Glasgow, working for Scotland on Sunday at the time, and it was a year really that the whole Beckham class of '92 team started to emerge, and my sports editor wanted me to go down to Manchester and basically just write a piece about this team that were emerging, but there was absolutely nothing set up. We could be a bit of a tin pot newspaper at that point, and no contacts, nothing set up. Just got a train down to Manchester. I remember, Steve was probably inside actually speaking to Fergie. I remember standing in the car park at the Cliff training ground with all the fans, just getting nowhere near the inside. And I had nothing for the piece, but I heard that Fergie was at a game in Bury, a reserve game. So I just went and I suppose doorstepped him. He was chatting to Ray Wilkins in the stand, I remember it. And I walked up to him and interrupted their conversation, which was a huge mistake. And in front of the whole stand, just got both barrels of the hairdryer. But there was an old Scottish journalist, the late Glenn Gibbons, who was a great friend of Fergie's, who said, "If you get in trouble, son, just use my name." Which I did. I managed to kind of stammer, I know Glenn Gibbons. And Fergie sort of went, call me, which I didn't even have his number or anything, but I got it from Glenn, called him at the crack of dawn the next morning, thinking I was in. And when his secretary passed the phone over, I just got a second hairdryer down the phone. But then at the end of it, after about another 5 minutes of being shouted at, he then said, "Right, I've spoken to Glenn, he says you're all right. What do you want to know?" And he just gave me absolute gold, quotable gold. And I think that's what he was like to cover, wasn't it, Steve? You had to respect him, you had to look after him, but if you did that, he would actually look after you as a journalist.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you made there, especially in terms of the modern world and journalism today. Steve, you can't have had the hairdryer. I've seen the pieces you've written about Sir Alex Ferguson.
I've seen him get the hairdryer.
Oh yes, I've got some hair as well. I don't know what he was doing with you.
Steve.
No, listen, I've had the hairdryer many times, as many of my colleagues have in Manchester, because when you are dealing with a man of such kind of intensity, and a man who is always looking for the edge. I wrote a piece this morning, and I remember sitting with Alex at a football writers' function, and we were just chatting, and he's fabulous, engaging company. He's got a broad knowledge of a lot of things, not just football. But I was chatting to him about the press and his relationship with them, and he kind of sort of mischievously said that he enjoyed his spats with the press because. And his confrontations with them, because it kind of kept him on the edge and gave him a motivation. And I'm sure all the lads that have been in his press conferences will have had sort of moments where they've asked a question and then held the breath because they weren't sure what was coming next. But that was the great thing about him. He is a football man, and even since his retirement, although he's got many other interests, he could be always seen in the Old Trafford director's box, and he's still at heart a Manchester United fan, and I'm absolutely certain he'll be back there.
I think the fact that he's on the front pages as well as the back page is quite significant, because he's part of all of our lives. He's part of footballing culture, but he also transcends football as well. And I think a lot of people, even with a passing interest in the game, know all about, you know, his character, his belligerence, his charisma, and there is a generation of football who have only ever known Sir Alex Ferguson as the dominant force at the biggest club in the country, according to Man United fans, and I think as far as the game is concerned. But also other managers, I mean, working in the south, covering clubs, trying to get anywhere near him and failing so often. It's fascinating to kind of see the impact that this situation is having with football fans, who have all come together to basically send their good wishes to him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course our good wishes from everybody here at the Sunday Supplement, and nice words from everybody on the table, because we've all known Sir Alex Ferguson for a long period of time. We all respect his achievements, and of course our thoughts are with Sir Alex Ferguson this morning and his family at this difficult time. We hope he makes a swift recovery. Welcome back. OK, let's talk Chelsea-Liverpool, that game at Stamford Bridge a little bit later on, 4:30 kickoff. You can watch it on Sky, of course. You're in Rome in the week to see Liverpool reach the Champions League final. In terms of scale of achievement, how big is this for Jurgen Klopp, for Liverpool and this group of players?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's another crazy game in midweek. Liverpool don't really do anything else. But when you think about it, they were 40-1 at the start of the Champions League. They had to play in the qualifiers. They haven't been in knockout stages for 9-10 years. You look at the squad and there's some terrific players, but you know, there's players like Andy Robertson, who was 5-6 years ago was playing amateur football, really. There's some great stories within that team, and they're taking on...
You reflect on his tweet this morning in your piece, didn't you?
It's a brilliant tweet, yeah. For anyone that hasn't seen it, you know, it just sums up his journey, really. But you think about them playing against the Ronaldos and the Sergio Ramoses, the royalty of European football, and it shows how far they've come. But I think that's a weapon for Liverpool. I think there's a sense of them that Klopp nurtures, that they're enjoying the ride, that there's a fearlessness about them, there's a fearlessness about the football. That's got its downsides, they concede goals, but actually, if you look at it, they've breezed in certain ways to this point. They were never behind in any of their knockout ties. I think they were behind for only 21 minutes of the group stages. It's looked like a white-knuckle ride, but actually this energy that's carried them all the way to the final, and I think they'll be a really important force, difficult force for Real Madrid to combat, because Real Madrid, you know, in the last Champions Leagues they've won, have tended to intimidate teams, beat them mentally, but I don't think Liverpool will be beaten mentally. They might be beaten on the pitch, but I don't think they'll be beaten upstairs.
Have they got what it takes, Darren?
Absolutely, they have. I think it's 46 goals that they've scored on the way to the final, and I agree, John. I mean, the last couple of occasions they've played Real Madrid, they've been overawed by Real Madrid. They've been overawed by the galaxy of stars that they've had. But you look at the Liverpool team now, they've got goals in them. They've got the graft of James Milner. They've got the work ethic of players like Andy Robertson, the youth of Trent Arnold, the class of Virgil van Dijk as well. And, you know, during the first half of this season, lots of people talk about the defensive deficiencies that would have held Liverpool back, but Klopp's addressed those. And the great thing about Liverpool at the moment is that they're still a work in progress. Yeah. You know, I was in pre-season with them last summer, and I remember during the first half of the season, Klopp being criticised for wanting to wait for Van Dijk. And lots of people saying there's got to be another defender out there that could solve Liverpool's defensive problems. But he made it clear out in Singapore that Van Dijk was the player he wanted, and while some of his predecessors were prepared to kind of paper over the cracks and whatever with assigning to appease fans, he wanted to wait for quality. And he's got that quality. And Liverpool are still... And I think that's the exciting thing for Liverpool and their fan base, that whatever happens in this final, they are still building. They will still be better. They've proven they can take on and beat Manchester City, not just once. You know, that could be dismissed as a fluke, but time and again. And I think, as far as this particular one-off game is concerned, I think Liverpool have got what it takes to win.
Klopp managed to put the spectre of his assistant manager to one side before the game, which I was surprised. He handled it very, very well, I thought, in Rome. He just said, I'm not going to talk about it. We've released a statement. Did you think it would cause more disruption to their preparations and their plans? And going forward, without Buvac alongside him, what difference, what changes can we expect with this Liverpool side and Klopp's preparations for games?
Yeah, I mean, the timing of it was, from Liverpool's point of view and Klopp's as well, seemed to be disastrous, because any manager will tell you he's number two, and particularly a number two that has been with him such a long time as he has, is kind of integral to the plan and what's going on and the preparation. So to kind of overcome that, and listen, I asked, we saw Jurgen on Friday at Melwood, and I asked him about that, but I was cut short very quickly by Matt McCann, who said, look, we're not discussing that, and full stop. So listen, we don't fully understand what's gone on there, whether there's been a fallout or whatever. All kinds of theories are coming out there, but there's no doubt that it could have had a disastrous, disruptive effect, especially on the eve of a key game like that. But I think this again is where Klopp has kind of nailed it at Liverpool. Such is the confidence within that dressing room and the team that even that didn't derail them at all from what the job in hand was. And like Darren, I think that Real Madrid are absolutely tailor-made for Liverpool. I think, you know, you do see signs of this Real Madrid kind of great run in the Champions League coming to an end. I think that team in the next year or two will need massive reconstruction. But you know, and Liverpool do have the capability to exploit all Real Madrid's weaknesses. And I see shades of Istanbul in 2005, where Liverpool went into that tournament. I think they had to pre-qualify for that. I'm not sure. Anyway, whatever. They certainly weren't favourites.
They're Jimmy Traore and
at any stage, and their team wasn't probably.
Well, Gerrard
as good.
saved them against Olympiacos, didn't he?
Yeah, probably wasn't as good as it is today. So, yeah, I think Liverpool will be massively looking forward to that occasion, because it will not only make a statement for themselves in Europe and feed that sort of history and tradition of doing well in Europe, but it would also make a big statement ahead of next season in their ability to win their first league championship in 28 years.
I don't think it'd be easy, because I mean, if you look at Real Madrid, they're beating the champions of France, Italy and Germany, and they've got experienced players who know how to find a way to win. Spurs beat Real Madrid earlier in the competition. Second after they're so far off the pace as far as the league title race is concerned, behind Barcelona. But the Champions League has become their competition.
They do turn up when it matters.
They
They cuffed Manchester United in the Super Cup at the start of the season, didn't they? United were never really in that game.
And I remember the Champions League final last year when they just destroyed Juventus. They just raised their performance level, because they do see it as their competition. And I think Liverpool have got to be conscious of that, that they will need to raise their level again. They'll need Mo Salah to be at his very best and all that kind of stuff. But
there are those subplots, though, aren't there, with Salah and Ronaldo? Because Ronaldo will not want to be upstaged by this young guy who's, you know, the coming force in European football. And he is a man for the big occasion as well.
Just going back to Buvac, so there was a point where I thought it was a bit of an issue on Wednesday, which was, you know, you're looking at
when Roma started scoring goals.
Yeah. I mean, Klopp needed to make a change. Looking at the second half, it was just one of those periods in a game where the momentum's going completely with one team, and the other team needs to change things. And at that point, Klopp was very alone in the dugout. You know, he didn't really turn to any of his other assistants. Normally, he'd have had Buvac on his shoulder, advising on the substitutions, and he has used them as a sort of sounding board in that way. So if we get into a tight final, there might be a point where, I'm sure there will be a point where he wishes he had Buvac with them. In general, as Steve said, the mood of Liverpool is such that they can brush off setbacks like that. But I don't think we can pretend that it's not going to affect them in some way. I mean, he's very important, Buvac.
Yeah. OK, another contentious point that we'd like to talk about, Darren, is Mo Salah winning the Football Writers' Footballer of the Year. A lot of Manchester City supporters are upset. They're upset with us for voting for Mo Salah?
Yeah.
Should they be? Are they entitled to be upset?
De Bruyne has been a fantastic player for them and the Premier League this season, and it's important to make that point. However, I can't see how you can score 40 goals in a season and propel your side into the top 4 to a Champions League final, scoring decisive goals, creating goals as well, and not be the footballer of the year. De Bruyne has been fantastic, but I still believe if you were to take De Bruyne out of the City side, they could win the league. Obviously not by so far, but they could win the league. They've got that much quality and talent in that side. Salah is just a force of nature. I mean, the character, first of all, to come back from obviously being frozen out at Chelsea, go out, reinvent himself, go to Roma where he scored goals as well. People saying this is a freak season. He scored goals at Roma as well. Then to come to Liverpool, cope with the pressure of delivering and just deliver time after time after time. I think he is an utterly deserving recipient of the award, and I don't think this is a freak season either. I think he'll go on to get better, surrounded by quality players who'll provide a platform for him.
In any other season, in any other season, De Bruyne would have won it hands down. I think we're only talking about Salah or having this debate because City fans are maybe annoyed that one of their players has not got it in a record-breaking season. It's only because Salah has just had such an exceptional season, and as Darren said, take De Bruyne out of City's side, City would probably still have won the league. Take Mo Salah out of that Liverpool side, I doubt whether they'd be in the Champions League final.
Absolutely. I have no problem saying I voted for Salah for that reason. He's been consistent all the way through this season, and he's lifted other players. He reminds me a lot of Suarez in so much as he lifts the performance of the players around him. And I think that if he were not to win it after this season, leading in the race for the Golden Boot, propelling Liverpool, as I said, to where they are at the moment, he's never going to win it, is he?
No. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I mean, I voted for Salah, but I would have no argument with someone that voted for De Bruyne. I understand City fans' point of view, but I just think if you've played football, scoring goals is the hardest bit. The forwards are the best players, and what Salah has done is absolutely astonishing. De Bruyne's been astonishing as well, but there's been other, as the lads have said, important players in that City team who've created and scored goals, but the way Salah has decided things at key moments they're not tap-ins, they're goals he makes himself, quality goals, all types of goals. He is just carrying a football team. He's not carrying them on the shoulders, but he's pushing them to a level they just couldn't reach without him.
Another prestigious award that people are talking about him winning is the FIFA World Player of the Year award. Is he at the level of Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo now?
Not yet, because even in his best ever season, and maybe they haven't quite been at their best, they're probably similar numbers, similar goals, similar assists, which shows the standards that they've set. But he's starting to get close, and he, if you look at the hallmarks of what he's got, he's only 25. They've been doing it for a lot longer. He can get better, and he's showing the characteristics they've got, i.e. what I've just said, the ability to just transcend a team and transcend a game and score from anywhere. So he can be there in the next couple of years.
Darren, is anyone going to...
point as well, just on that, the PFA, his own sort of players and colleagues and opponents voted for him as well, so, for their award. So it was not just the football writers who voted for him, even the guys that play against him voted for him.
Is anyone ever going to own up to selling Salah at Chelsea, from Chelsea?
That's a really good question, because Conte obviously wanted no part of that one.
Nobody wants to take responsibility for this.
No, it wasn't me. I think I was probably going to be the first journalist to mention Shaggy on the Sunday supplement, forgive me. But I think as far as Chelsea as a club are concerned, the model they have is that the decisions are mostly taken not by the head coach. But it is true to say that when he was there and Jose Mourinho was the manager, he couldn't get a game. And to be fair, Mourinho had so many quality players that decision ultimately was justified. He went on to win the league, another Premier League title with Chelsea and De Bruyne, who couldn't get a game as well.
And it's not like we were sitting in the press box at Stamford Bridge at the time. To be fair to Mourinho, saying you can't sell him.
Yeah,
he's going to be the player. He's going to be the Football Writers' Footballer of the Year or the PFA Player of the Year in 5 years' time. What are you doing?
But he was 21, and they'd moved heaven and earth to sign him ahead of Liverpool. I just think it's about Chelsea's lack of patience. I think it's a cultural problem Chelsea have got. Whichever individual made the decision to sell him, they do it with managers. They've done it with a number of players. They do it with their own young players. They get rid of them before like Lukaku, before there's a chance for them to blossom. And it's a cultural thing with Chelsea. They don't wait for teams to build. They don't wait for players to come good or for managers to get through bad patches. And that's the heart of the issue. And that's why Salah's not the only player they've done this with.
And ironically, they are at a point now where they need to rely on their young players because they don't want to spend as much as they used to in the past. They can't keep pace with City and United, and so now they need to maybe invest in some of the good young players, and they do have lots of them. You know, Mason Mount is talked of in reverential terms at Chelsea.
Won the Youth Cup again on Friday, didn't they, against Arsenal?
Yeah, and Jody Morris, it must be said, has done an outstanding job with those young players, and hopefully he does get the credit he deserves. But you know, you look at Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who's going to go back to Chelsea. Hopefully they will give him the game time he needs and have that patience in the talent that they have nurtured as a club. They've sent out to get their experience. Hopefully they will come back and form the core of the side that goes on maybe to challenge for the title next season.
To lose Salah, obviously, you could say is careless, but with De Bruyne as well going, then it just smacks of incompetence, doesn't it, really? Yeah. And you don't really associate that with Chelsea, to be honest, and the structure they have there. But, you know, how Chelsea would love Salah and De Bruyne in that team now. You know, maybe they'd have won the league by a canter and be in a Champions League final.
Yeah. But they did win it last season under Antonio Conte. But the story that Sunday Mirror have got, which you've written this morning, Darren, is that Conte could swap jobs with Maurizio Sarri at Napoli. I think that would be a football first, I think, wouldn't it, if that happened.
Well, Di Laurentiis, the owner of Napoli, has been saying he wants Sarri to stay. And he's outlined all the reasons. He's done a whirlwind of interviews in the last couple of days, basically saying he wants Sarri, who's led Napoli into a title challenge against Juventus. Juventus now 4 points clear at the moment, but he said he's got to stay. If he stays here, he can build on what he has done. He's not yet the complete manager, but if he does go, I have a great relationship with Conte. I could go for Conte. You'd have no problem with that whatsoever. It would really depend on whether Conte wants to stay in the English game or whether he would leave. I think he'd be great for Arsenal, for example, you know, because I think Arsenal are a club, I know you're going to do it later, so I won't say too much, but they're a club where the players haven't had the whip cracked at them for ages, and maybe Conte could go in and sort them out. But as far as his future is concerned, Chelsea, in my opinion, should keep him and maybe give him what he wants if they want to get back rather than start all over again. But if they don't want to keep him, Napoli would take him with open arms.
OK. I just want to touch on this story as well, Steve, that you've written this morning about Martial and Willian. So there's a potential swap on there between those two players. Mourinho fancies Willian or wants to coach him again, this time at Manchester United, and Chelsea want Martial.
Well, I mean, I think there's a great deal of frustration at United, particularly amongst Jose Mourinho and his staff, that Martial is not really sort of accelerating his progress, really.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, he kind of has... He's kind of hit a bit of a wall, you know. It's a bit of a catch-22. He's not getting the regular starts and the regular games. When he does get a start in a game, as we saw at Brighton on Friday night, you know, he stumbles and stutters and doesn't really perform.
Steve, can I just say, when I covered Chelsea and De Bruyne was leaving, the noises were very, very similar around De Bruyne. He hasn't got the character to hold down a place in the team. He's up against top players, and he hasn't got the will or the mentality, or he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that, when all he needs is time and games. And I just wonder if that's the case with Martial.
Well, certainly there's a feeling in the boardroom at United that they don't want him to go. They don't want to sell him. They kind of went out on a limb, really, to get him, paid an awful lot of money for a 19-year-old boy that nobody had really sort of heard much of from Monaco. I think he'd only played about 30 games for them when United spent 36 million on him and kind of shocked everybody. But, of course, we know Jose, he likes the players he likes. He likes them to have a certain mentality. Now, in Willian, he has a player who's got a cast iron mentality, and I think, you know, there have been several occasions in the last 12, 18 months where Jose has had little spats with Martial and been in the press and kind of called him out a little bit. Not always the wisest move with young players, but that's what he does sometimes. And I think, you know, they're reaching a point now where, you know, Lukaku and Sanchez are the main two strikers at Manchester United. There's no getting away from that. And, you know, whether Martial is going to be in the picture next season or not, I'm not quite so sure. I
just want to finish off actually on Marcus Rashford because of his performance against Brighton, and Mourinho very, very dismissive after that defeat on Friday night. What are your thoughts about Rashford, his future at Manchester United and his relationship with Mourinho now?
I think Rashford's frustrated because he again seems to have taken a step backwards from a position where, you know, for all the world it looked like he was going to be United's main striker for years to come. But again, the arrival of Lukaku and then Sanchez has kind of knocked him back as well. But and you know, you can't really see that situation changing very quickly because Jose will always go for the tried and trusted, and maybe Rashford will have to contend with another cameo role next season of maybe 15-20 minutes, or playing in the games where Jose doesn't start with Sanchez or Lukaku.
OK, guys, interesting stuff. I'm sure Rashford is a subject we'll return to, certainly before the World Cup finals. Gareth Southgate naming the squad later this month. OK, next up, the fight for survival. Stoke City, the first team to be relegated from the Premier League season, beaten by Palace yesterday. We'll talk more about that. It's coming next. Welcome back. With us this morning, Steve Bates, Darren Lewis and Jonathan Northcroft. Let's just remind you what's in the papers. It's dominated, of course, by Sir Alex Ferguson. The Mail on Sunday, back page this morning, Fergie's fight for life. He underwent an operation yesterday after what we think is a suspected brain hemorrhage. Jonathan's paper, the Sunday Times, Ferguson fighting for life. Jonathan's written about his experiences with Sir Alex Ferguson over the years. Front page of The Sun this morning, Fergie's fight for life. It is on most of the front pages of the newspapers. Stay strong, big man. That's the message from football and the football community this morning. Also the back page of the Sunday Mirror this morning, reflecting on Sir Alex Ferguson, life and times. And of course, everybody here at the Sunday Supplement wishes Sir Alex Ferguson all the best in his recovery. OK, we do want to talk about relegation now, though, from the Premier League. Stoke City, the first side to be relegated from the Premier League this season, beaten by Crystal Palace yesterday, 30 points. West Brom, a big win for them under Darren Moore. Still a chance, still a slim chance that they can stay up, Darren. Swansea play Southampton, of course, on Tuesday night. That's a huge game at the Liberty Stadium. Huddersfield, of course, they're still vulnerable. West Ham safe after their win yesterday. But let's talk about Stoke, the appointment of Paul Lambert, the results that they've had since, and what happens next.
Well, what happens next is that, having appointed him, I feel they should stick by him now that they've gone down. He'll have a plan to get them back up, and I think he'll want to sort out that dressing room. I think what's affected them is that they've not been able to score goals. They've lost Marko Arnautovic. You look at the impact that he's had on West Ham, who I don't think would have got out of trouble without his determination, certainly during the second half of the season, since David Moyes arrived at the club and basically made it clear that he had to work harder and deliver more for the £24 million that they paid for him. Been a big miss for Stoke. And yeah, they've struggled to score goals. And I mean, if you were to be hypercritical, you would say that in Lambert, they got a guy who's defensively minded, and he was defensively minded at his former club. He's gone to Stoke, and really they've needed to go on the front foot, and they've spent a long time on the back foot. I think there is a wider issue with themselves, West Brom and Southampton, and even Crystal Palace, who were fortunate to have the experience of Roy Hodgson. All of them are clubs where there was a call for more expansive football. People want to see more sexy football, basically, where they weren't satisfied with just staying in the league. I remember Stoke fans, and they were right to do so with their financial investment in the club, saying, you know, don't tell us to be careful what we wish for, you know, because we pay our season ticket money. We have a right to demand more than just the 40 points every season, Route 1 football. and staying in the Premier League. Why shouldn't we expect a better standard of play? And what's happened is they've opened up and they've tried to deliver that style of play, but as a result they've struggled. It's quite ironic really that they perhaps stayed with Mark Hughes for too long, but yet had Southampton brought Mark Hughes in sooner, maybe they might have a chance, because he's really starting to inspire them to rally against relegation themselves. But I think that whole idea that the club's in trouble, they've aspired to a more expansive style of play, is now... Listen, Palace are safe and well done to them, but I think it's really hurt a couple of the others.
Has this been coming?
With Stoke, yeah, it has. They're a club that lost their way for reasons that Darren mentioned, that they tried to become something else. And I think the clubs that you talked about are yes, maybe the fans do want more expansive football, but essentially they're real working class fan bases who want to see their players work and show a certain pride first of all. And I think that started to go by the wayside at Stoke, because they were trying to recruit players which had ability, but there was probably a reason that they were on the market at Stoke's level, and that was the flaws that they had. And I think I've got a lot of sympathy for Paul Lambert, because he's tried to fight a relegation battle, but he's also tried to sort out the culture of the club, and he's taken brave decisions like telling Afellay to stay away from training, disciplining Hesse and Berahino, and these are players that might have been useful to him, but he's felt it was more important to try and get the culture right and get the club back in touch with its fan base. And it might have hurt them in the short term, but I think if you're looking for someone to bring them back, then those are pretty good hallmarks of the kind of manager Stoke need.
I mean, just looking, when you do look at the 11, Steve, let's just go through a few of them. And some have got experience, some have got pedigree. Jack Butland, of course, in goal. Glenn Johnson, Shawcross, Zuma, Peters, Shaqiri, Joe Allen in the centre, up front, of course, Crouch, Diouf. Are we looking at that side thinking they should have been too good to go down?
Well, on paper, when you read those names out, you wonder why they're in trouble, you know, especially against teams that have come up from the Championship last season. But I think they've got an identity crisis, Stoke. I'm not sure they know anymore who they are. At one point, certainly under Tony Pulis, you knew who Stoke were. I'm not sure you know who Stoke are anymore. And alluding to what Darren said, this wish for a different style, a more sexy style, a more entertaining, attacking style. Stoke were always known. The old Britannia Stadium was a fearsome place to go. Now it's not really.
Yeah, that old wet Tuesday night at Stoke thing, it's gone, hasn't it?
It has gone.
Nice place to go for
it has gone. And you know, this identity thing, whatever happens from here on in, and I would say Stoke are an incredibly well-run club. Peter Coates and the Coates family who own the club are proper football people, and I'm absolutely certain that they will make the right decisions. They haven't actually made the right decisions, I don't think, in terms of recruitment, in terms of managers over the last few years, you know. And I'm sure a lot of Stoke fans this morning are perhaps wishing that they did have Tony Pulis back in charge, even though they reached a point with him where they thought, you know, this is just not fun anymore. But it's not fun being out of the Premier League, and a lot of teams who fall out of the Premier League have a really, really tough job getting back in. And it'll be interesting to see whether they totally rip up this team and this squad with the likes. I mean, can you see Shaqiri playing in the Football League?
But Steve, I think a big part of the problem with that, and you mentioned some of the problems that they've had with individual players. Shaqiri, this is a point of the season when you're in a relegation trouble, you need everyone in the same direction. Shaqiri's already been given interviews, even before it was signed and sealed, saying, I didn't come here for this. You know, I came here to play hard at the table. That's not the kind of attitude that you need in a relegation fight. I think they will have to rip up the side. Butland will go. Lots of big clubs talking about taking him. West Ham have been trying to sign Joe Allen since last Christmas. I think they'll have another go again, and they'll obviously get him a lot more cheaply. Shaqiri obviously will go. Zuma may well leave. I don't think he's a Championship player. When you look at the 11, I don't even think... they never really had any goals in them. Diouf doesn't score enough goals. Crouch is now
still the man, isn't he? And he's 35, isn't he?
Yeah, I think.
Would you like a quiz question?
Go on then, Mash. Go on.
Which Premier League club boasts the most Champions League winners in their squad?
Is it Stoke?
I think it was Stoke.
Yeah,
I think it was Stoke.
I'll tell you what.
Is that it?
We'll ask the audience to tweet us at Sunday Sup, and we will tell you at the start of part 4 if you can tell us who's got the most Champions League winners in their squad. Fight for survival, Darren Moore, big win. Another big win for him, Darren.
Huge win.
They're in with a chance, a slim chance. But he's got 11 points from his first 5 games in charge.
I don't
in
really
the
see
league. Does he get the job? Does he have to get the job?
What more can he do?
Yeah.
What more can he do? I mean, there is this view that it's always very dangerous to put caretaker managers in charge because it may well be that the players are performing simply because he is not the predecessor. He's not the man that they wanted out, that they were underperforming under. But he has a real connection with the club, and I think that's key. And I don't think that you can take points off Benitez, Jose Mourinho, Klopp, Pochettino, and not have done well in your audition to get the job. They were dead and buried, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. And now they're not the first club to go down, Stoke are. And I think they could conceivably catch either of the other two. Let's say, for example, Swansea and Southampton play out a draw on I think it's Wednesday night. Then it's all to play for next weekend, Tuesday. But you know, Darren Moore this now is a test of the West Brom board. What are they looking for? That's the bigger question in a manager, because I can't see that they could be looking for anything other than what Darren Moore gives them.
Yeah.
Whether they stay up or not.
Matches, you get the job.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's as simple as that, isn't it?
And you know, he's a great rallying point for the whole supporters community at a time when they're going to be depressed if they go down. They're going to need that energy to get them back. But I think he's shown great coaching qualities as well beyond the sort of inspirational aspect. I mean, it's a bit of a mess of a squad that they were left with West Brom this season with their recruitment, and he's taken over. He's identified the right players in the right positions. He's got them asking questions again, attacking wise, which they weren't before. I think he knows the job. He knows what it's about. It's
and the players love him as well. That's the thing.
Do you not think though that if they do stay up, then there will be that temptation for the board to appoint a bigger name manager, for want of a better phrase? Exactly, Darren. And you know, I'd be completely on your side on that one. But I think they will. The board at West Brom may feel the temptation to do that.
The two smaller clubs, shall we say, that are doing best in the Premier League, you know, Bournemouth and Burnley, are the ones with not big name managers.
Of course,
that stuck with a younger English manager.
I'm not saying they should do that.
No.
I'm just
they should resist the temptation.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Swansea Southampton. That's also on Tuesday. That's a huge game now, isn't it? Big win for Southampton. Which way does this go?
It's a really hard one to call. I mean, Southampton have to win this, I think, because their last game is against Manchester City, and I think even with City playing in the flip-flops, they will probably take Southampton to the cleaners. I'm absolutely certain of that, because that's just the way City have played all season. I don't see that letting up. So it's a real big one. And Mark Hughes, I was at Everton yesterday, although I have to say I wasn't doing very much on the game because of the Alex Ferguson situation. I got switched to that. But I was in the press room when Mark Hughes came in after, and he was so down and deflated because they were just seconds away from a real big win that I think would have made them secure.
Yeah.
I think now they probably need to win at Swansea to make themselves safe. I think anything less, and they'll go into that last game in trouble probably.
I think they've got a problem because Swansea's record at home is very good since Carvalhale's taken over.
And they've beaten Arsenal, haven't they, this season at the Statue of Liberty? They've beaten Liverpool, didn't they, as well?
And I think only Spurs and Chelsea have won there since Carvalhale's taken over. So I think they've got their work cut out. The big problem for Southampton, it won't be City playing in their flip-flops that relegates them. If they were to go down, it will be the decision not to sell Van Dijk last summer. Not because of where he wanted to go or anything like that, but he made it very clear with his transfer request and everything he'd said subsequently that he no longer wanted to play for the club, and they wanted to hold on to him and make a point. We are not a selling club. When the fact is, football has a food chain, and they're very much being kind of pillaged in recent years. And if you have someone who's not willing to play for the club anymore, you've got to sell him and move on. What he did was he undermined the authority of Pellegrino because basically he said, I'm not committed to what you wanted to do. And I think Pellegrino was a mistake anyway, because he only scored 41 goals last season for Alaves. Puel ended the season with 41 goals. So you're not really trading up when you get Pellegrino in. And the players just really didn't buy into his methods at all. They stuck with him for far too long. That's what relegated them, the decision-making at the club, not this little period now. I think Mark Hughes has done good work to get them to where they are to have a chance.
I think you can only go on for so long selling your best players, and time's caught up with Southampton, I think, on that one. Whether or not they survive, I think still time's caught up with them because, you know, they sold, I think, 5 players to Liverpool in the last 4 years.
But you have to say, those players wanted to go. Those players all wanted to go.
Darren, what would your policy be on players? Virgil van Dijk comes to you as Southampton and says, I want to leave. This is last summer. On what terms would you agree to sell him in that transfer window?
I'm always of the opinion, if a player wants to leave, you have to let him go. There's no real big victory in keeping a player beyond...
What if you've got a sulk who just says, I want to leave, sell me?
Coutinho wanted to leave, right? Coutinho wanted to leave Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp now says there would have been no point me keeping Coutinho beyond January when all he's doing is trying not to get injured so that he can get to Barcelona. And I think when you have a player who's not committed, if you keep them, all you do is the player does what he wants, he undermines the authority of the manager.
Trains with the academy.
Absolutely. And it's counterproductive, really, whereas you could sell him, get players in that are buying into what you want to do and move forward on as a club. And I think that's what Southampton certainly should have done with Van Dijk.
Darren Lewis, the next chief executive of...
I doubt that very much.
Good dad.
Quick word on Chris Hughton, job he's done. Big win on Friday night to guarantee and secure Premier League football at Brighton next season. Very, very impressive character, very likeable, very popular guy within the game. But the most important thing is he's kept Brighton in the Premier League.
Fantastic, and the sort of Brighton's peer clubs are still fighting for survival, and they're going to survive quite comfortably. And it was a very Chris Hughton-like sort of triumph I felt on Friday. Just a brilliantly organised team, really hard working, well motivated, sort of beating the odds. You know, he did that at Norwich, and then they didn't give him the chance to really continue. And I hope he gets that opportunity to stay a bit longer at Brighton, having taken them up and done what he's done. And they've been really good to watch, Brighton, this season as well.
Yeah, they have been securing their Premier League future with that victory over Manchester United on Friday night. OK, next up, I'm looking forward to this. We're going to talk about Steven Gerrard. Should he have taken that job at Rangers? It's a big one. OK, in the last part we did have a little quiz. Which Premier League club has got the most Champions League winners in their squad? We did ask the audience. We asked Steve, we asked Darren, and we asked John. Final answers, Stoke?
I think so.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely spot on. Can you name the 5? There's 5 players in their squad. Can you name them? They've all amazingly won the Champions League.
Fletcher.
Yes.
Hesse. Afellay.
Yeah, there's a strong Barcelona sort of contingent, isn't there, of fringe players.
Yeah.
Shaqiri's out at
Bojan, Shaqiri, Afellay.
Shaqiri.
Is that all 5? Yeah, I think so.
Paul Lambert
himself. Yeah, amazingly. And they'll be playing Championship football next season at the Bet365. Good luck with that.
Well, those players won't.
Yeah, those players, they definitely won't. This man will be playing, or be managing, in Scotland next season. Steven Gerrard, announced as the Rangers manager on Friday. What is the challenge, and what has whetted his appetite?
Well, in taking the job, he's shown the first characteristic of a good manager, which is courage, I'd have to say. I think it has whetted his competitive spirit, because Rangers is such a big club, and it's such a... Glasgow is, for me, the most passionate football city in the country, and he will love that, coming from probably the second most passionate city in Liverpool. But it's a huge challenge. You can't underestimate how good a job Brendan Rodgers is doing at Celtic. He's on for a double treble. They've won 7 titles in a row. He's built Celtic to a sort of technical level beyond the rest of the Scottish League. Celtic's budget is 3 times that of Rangers. And it's like Stevie's, he's going into a club that's, the recruitment's been really poor, it's been in turmoil, it's not a sort of straightforward picture in the boardroom. They've only been back in the top flight for three years. It's a huge challenge, and I just hope he gets time, because if he does get time, he could really give Rangers that kind of that energy, that sense of purpose that I think they've been lacking ever since they folded and were reborn. But if he doesn't get time, he'll just be another casualty of the sort of madness that's affected that club in the last few years. One thing that's really interesting, it does say to me that he thinks he can take on Brendan Rodgers, which is fascinating, having covered them both when they were at Liverpool together, and Stevie was his captain, and the relationship was close at one point, and then it maybe wasn't so close at the end. So that's a really fascinating subplot. But I just hope he gets his good advice. I think he's going to speak to Graham Souness, and I hope people are aware that it's like taking.
You read Graham's piece from last week in the Sunday Times, which was very good. Yeah.
I mean, Celtic are basically Bayern Munich, and Rangers are Dortmund, but the difference is that it's a Dortmund, but with everyone expecting them to somehow beat Bayern Munich all the time, which is really difficult. I think Celtic have beaten Rangers in 9 of the last 11 meetings. You know, they're 5-0, 4-0 the last 2. They're just not on a level at the moment. But that's there's one job that he's got to do, and that is get Rangers back to Celtic's level, and that's hard.
Just in season 1, what is par? What's acceptable here?
I would say finishing second. I mean, they haven't been second.
And he'll get a pass. He'll get a free pass if he finishes second to Celtic in his first season in the league.
I think it's slightly more than that. I think he would have to finish second and be respectable in the Old Firm derbies. Maybe not win them all, but be respectable. And that's difficult. That's harder than it sounds. Aberdeen are good. Hibs are good at the moment. So even finishing second is going to be quite a difficult thing.
Yeah. When you outline, Johnny, how far Rangers are behind Celtic, doesn't that tell you that Steven Gerrard, in talks with Rangers, must have been either promised
absolutely
something in terms of finances and resources, or he must know something, because on the face of it you would say he's on a hiding to nothing there, especially what's happened to recent Rangers managers.
It does make me think that, because
so I'm certain that he must have been told something that has convinced him that it's a good time to go to Rangers. Now, you also mentioned Glasgow being a fiercely passionate, intense city. That won't faze him, because he's used to Liverpool, and you know, the Glasgow Rangers rivalry is probably only marginally ahead of Liverpool and Manchester United in terms of pure hatred. You know, and Stevie Gerrard has been immersed in that since he was a small boy. So I don't think those elements will faze him. He's lived in a goldfish bowl, and the expectation of being a Liverpool captain and a player who is from Liverpool will have taught him all the skills that he will need in Glasgow, and I think he'd be okay in that. It's just a shame. I mean, he'd probably be Rangers' best player.
Yeah, he would,
if he pulled on a pair of boots. So I don't know whether he'll be tempted to do that. Maybe he will after the first training session. But you know, that shows you how far adrift Rangers are.
The key thing's recruitment, and that he needs really good advice. I mean, when Mark Warburton went up there, he made the mistake of thinking the Scottish League was I don't know if he thought it was easy, but he thought he could get away with getting English experienced players from the lower divisions here, and that they would be a success. And he paid $2 million for Joe Garner, and I think Philip Senderos was on £10,000 a week and all that sort of stuff, and that blew Rangers' budget. And what Stevie needs is somebody, and he knows Mark Allen, the director of football there, well, and he needs somebody to tell him that it's a little bit different to that. He needs players that are good in that division, so he needs to get some Scottish talent. But he also probably needs to use his links with Liverpool. He was in charge of the under-18s, the youth team there, and maybe try and grab a few of their players on loan. And
I'm certain we'll see Liverpool players from the reserves and the under-23s and the academy sort of going up to Glasgow.
But do you not think that in the short term, as obviously being billed as catching Rangers, and Rodgers was really interesting when he was asked about it. He said now he's stepping into my world, which was a fascinating thing for him to say. And obviously you were talking about Gerrard being motivated to do well, but obviously it will put a bit of fire under Rodgers as well, because he won't want to be, the master up there. He won't want to be upstaged by the apprentice in football in managerial terms. But I just wonder if you look at some of the teams they've dropped points against. They beat Kilmarnock yesterday, but they've dropped points against them earlier in the season. Falkirk and Dundee and Partick Thistle and all. Doesn't he just need to get that team performing? you know, get the players out of possibly undermine Graham Murty, and maybe just get them playing, get the confidence back, get a culture of winning into the side before you start to talk about taking on a Celtic side who are carrying it.
Yeah, no, he does,
before them up there.
Because Rangers were always the steamroller, you know, the giant that the teams have been intimidated by them, and you know they have lost that intimidation factor, and it's a bit like League One maybe, where not all the opponents are going to be of a high technical level, but the one mistake you shouldn't make is thinking that they're not going to push it to the limit, because they're going to fight. Every game's going to be a fight, and everyone wants to beat Rangers and Celtic. But Steve said Stevie Gerrard's a real competitor, and that's what he's gone for.
It's given Rangers a big lift, because 6,000-7,000 Rangers supporters were at Ibrox to welcome him on Friday. So they clearly believe in Steven Gerrard and his influence and his stature and his pedigree and the influence that he can have over that football club.
Yeah, because it's given them back the sense of being this huge football club, which is what they were 20 years ago when they were challenging in the Champions League properly. And he gives them that glamour back. Souness did the same when he arrived. He just swept in there and raised the bar for everyone. And I think what Stevie's thought is, if he gets that right with that club, that fan base behind them, then he gets it right big time. That probably catapults him to bigger jobs in England than he would have done if he'd started in the lower leagues here. So that's
I think taking Gary McAllister with him is a smart move as well.
Yeah. And also the positivity that he spoke with at his first press conference, because he didn't talk about it being too big for him potentially, or too big for him. He didn't talk about it being a difficult task or whatever else. He talked about the belief he had and the fact that a lack of experience was a problem for other people but not for him. And I think he has worked under some fantastic names at Liverpool. He's got a fantastic manager still at Liverpool, and he'll have brilliant contacts as well to call on. But most tellingly, when he walks into that dressing room, he'll have more authority than any of his last 4 or 5 predecessors. And I think that's going to be key for what he's trying to do. And I also think British football needs him, Lampard, Terry. It needs a new wave of management. We have to stop recycling the same managers again and again. We respect what they've done in the game, and they've made wonderful contributions. Palace wouldn't have got out of trouble without Roy Hodgson. David Moyes has helped West Ham out of trouble as well. But we need younger managers. We need players. We need a Darren Moore. We need more young managers to decide not to go into TV. Sorry, Sky, but also to go into the dugout and show what they've learned. And so that's, for me, is a big part of why it's really fascinating.
He's got high standards. So having played at Liverpool and seen the quality of players there and been a part of that dressing room, it's just wonder how the frustration might kick in when he realises the standard is way below what he's used to.
He must know that.
I mean, Roy Keane, I think, found that, didn't he, when he was manager at Sunderland and the places. Anyway.
OK, good stuff, guys. Good luck to Steven Gerrard, popular figure, of course, in the game. Good luck to him at Rangers. OK, next up, it's yet another farewell to Arsene Wenger. This time, it's at the Emirates. It's his final home game in charge of Arsenal today. More on that next. OK, welcome back. Are there any train spotters? Oh, have you got a train spotterish side to your characters?
My brother was a train spotter, now he's a referee, so it tells you everything. Right,
OK. What was it about train spotting that got him hooked?
I never understood.
Did he spend hours at Crewe railway station jotting down numbers of locomotives?
It wasn't even as glamorous as that. I just used to stand off our local bridge looking at Class 37s. Train spotters will know what I mean. But yeah, strange boy.
You've got an unusually high knowledge of trains there, Johnny.
Why am I asking? Programmes in the Football League. OK, so at the moment, under the Football League rules, every club, every game, every home game has to produce a matchday programme, a memento of the occasion. But there is going to be a vote next month whether Football League clubs should continue to produce matchday programmes. The problem, of course, is falling sales, high production costs, and low take-up. What do we think on the history of programmes, the ritual of buying a programme for so many people, and thoughts of a number of football clubs who are considering whether to do away with them?
Well, first of all, I think it would be a bad decision. They're your memento of the game. They're your they're your recollection from, you know...
But not everyone, the point is, not everyone's buying them, Darren. There's 1,000 people.
Well, this is the point. The big argument, the big argument is
them.
that lots of people can now get their team news from Twitter, the information about players they can get from social media, from the internet, and also clubs spend a lot of money on them. A couple of good pieces. I read one by Martin Samuel this week, was saying part of the problem is that every club's programme now looks the same. They're all trying to go with glossy. They're not the pamphlets that you used to get in the past, you know, the organic pieces of work that they have been of yesterday. Suddenly they want to be high quality productions who cost a lot of money but actually don't tell you anything different, tell you anything that... and obviously they cost a lot of money, that is the big thing as well. But I think as far as losing them is concerned, I just think it will be another part of football, the identity of football that will disappear if we were to lose programmes. I think it'd be a big mistake. I think one of the problems is that there's so much content available now everywhere, and you used to buy your programme because that might be the only place you'd be able to actually read about the players you loved. I mean, I remember, for some reason, I still remember reading a Mark McGee interview in the Aberdeen match programme and finding out that Red Wine was his favourite song and he liked steak and chips. And
now you can phone him and he'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, but you know, you can't go 10 minutes on social media without another article about your team or another interview with one of your players, and clubs themselves plaster quotes everywhere. But it used to be you'd wait for the match programme to actually read. I mean,
you used to sort of go to the game, and the first thing you'd do in the programme is turn to the manager's notes. Now the manager's notes are just a generic address saying we welcome so and so today. You know, you've heard everything about what the manager's said.
But Sir Alex Ferguson's were always a must.
His were
must read.
Yeah, but nowadays I'm not so sure. I can't remember the last story I did from getting to a game on a Saturday and looking in the programme notes and being blown away by the manager's kind of
we should put into context that's not why they exist.
I mean, no, it isn't. No, but
helpful, but not.
But it's one aspect of it that, as the boys have alluded to, there's so much information out there. A lot of what's in the programme you probably already know.
It's a funny one. I mean, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, but it's Arsene Wenger's last home game today. Now that programme will be a memento. That in fact, there's been a few stories from his programme notes because that's a special thing. But apart from those really special games,
but who's it? I mean, Ollie Holt makes this point in his column today. It's a memento for Ollie Holt, and it's great. And it's great that Ollie he always picks up a programme whenever he goes. So he only buys the programme if he goes to a game. He's not interested if he doesn't go to a game. But who's the memento for outside of your own house?
Yeah, but
how many times have you looked back? How many times have you looked back at the Mark McGee interview in that Aberdeen programme?
He carries it with him.
I get the point, but it's a bit like, you know, digital photos and photos that you print out. I mean, in 20 years' time, if you've been at that Arsenal game and you've got the match programme, you can pick it up, you can look at it. Whereas if you've prepared for that game by reading Twitter or looking at a TV interview, it's gone. So, yeah, it's something physical. It's there.
Such is the nature of my job. I cover mainly Premier League games, and the programmes are £4 or £5. If you go to Wembley, it's 12 to 15 quid. So, I mean, you know, is that a necessary spend? I'm not sure it is.
But fans don't want to lose them because, when you say who is it for, who should it be for? It should be for you. It's your experience. You've been to the game. That's what you remember from the game. And, you know, there have been so many... you talk about Arsene Wenger, you know, obviously the very sad passing of Ray Wilkins a couple of weeks ago, you know. And there are lots of people who... Football is increasingly detaching itself away from the fans. And
there's much more community stuff in programmes these days, aren't there? That probably gets sort of forgotten about in the wider world. You read programmes and there's lots of stuff, community-based stuff, and that only really appeals to fans of that club, probably.
OK, so keep. Yes.
I would keep. Yeah.
I would keep. Absolutely, I would keep. Yes.
OK.
Not keep them.
Shall we? Wenger.
you can do this bit.
You start.
Darren, you're in Madrid. Found someone. You're in Madrid. Was the performance against Atletico Madrid in the Europa League's semi-final second leg? Is that why Arsene Wenger is leaving Arsenal?
No, it's not. It's because basically the fans have been vocal about the fact that he's quite clearly not the same manager that he arrived as. And we all, you know, as much as we love him and love as much as he's been fantastic for the English game, it is a truth that he no longer has, the magic is gone, in a very simple way.
That was obvious on Thursday, wasn't it?
Very obvious.
It was just clear.
Yeah, I mean, look, you look at Atletico and they were a side well drilled. They were leaders. They were a team kind of fused by an invincible spirit, if you like. No Simeone on the sidelines, he's serving out a touchline ban, yet the players were able to go and take the game by the scruff of the neck. They took the lead and they saw it out. Arsenal had taken the lead at the Emirates. They wobbled, they surrendered, they conceded. I think as far as Wenger is concerned, he no longer has the ability to do you know, a big part of the analysis of the game was that he's got too much loyalty towards those players, and that in itself is, for me, is the reason why it's come to an end, because so often there have been players at that club who've not been able to do it anymore, and yet he's stuck by them for far too long, and that ultimately is why I think they've underachieved. And it may have been a bit brutal the way that the fans have kind of mobilised on social media towards him, but it is a fact that the younger managers in the game have overtaken him, and I think he will remain in the game. He'll be a sad loss to the game, but I think it's the right decision.
What sort of send-off will he get at the Emirates today? Because there is a suggestion that there is going to be a lap of appreciation. How many people will still be in that stadium when the final whistle goes against Burnley this afternoon?
I think most of them.
You do?
Yeah, I'd be very shocked and surprised and disappointed, really, with Arsenal fans if they didn't give him the respect he deserves. Look, you know, how many times have we been on this programme down the years and said, you know, should he stay, should he go, is it time for him to go? You know, we're not going to have that debate anymore, but we shouldn't forget the way he transformed Arsenal in many ways, and has been such a huge part of English football, and setting certain standards and playing in a style that now Pep Guardiola's getting, you know, all the praise and lauded for. Arsene Wenger's been doing that for a couple of decades with Arsenal. So, yeah, I would be very disappointed if Arsenal fans don't show up today and remain in the stadium and give him the send-off he quite rightly deserves. And I think they will. I think they will, because for all the angst and the at times bitterness towards him, I think genuinely they will look back and reflect on him as being perhaps the greatest manager the club's ever had.
Should he give a speech on the pitch to the Arsenal in the same way that Sir Alex did when he bowed out after 13 Premier League titles? Should Wenger do the same?
I hope he does, because one time that you think the magic is still there is when he talks. He's still compelling to listen to, and that'd be lovely if he did. I'm not sure they'll win the game, I have to say. I interviewed Ashley Barnes at Burnley, and Burnley are looking at that thinking, they're watching Diego Costa rough them up. You know, they're watching Mario Fellaini score in the last minute, and they're thinking, yeah, we could do that to Arsenal. And there's been something predictable about Arsenal's underachievement and failure recently, and they might find it's not quite the day-to-day that they'd have envisaged, because none of the send-offs quite been the script, the fairy tale so far.
No. Maybe the fans won't stay then.
They'll stay, but it might be a bit disappointing.
That's right, Burnley, of course, only 3 points behind, aren't they? OK. Unfortunately, time's beating us, lads, unfortunately. But thanks very much to Steve, to Darren and to Johnny for coming in.